Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call the order the Everett City Council meeting, July 31st, 2024. The City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington's Open Public Meetings Act. Committee members are welcome to join either in person, remote via Zoom, or by calling in. For those who wish to participate via Zoom in the future, you'll find the instructions to register for public comment on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Please note that we do not allow comments of any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. We ask that the audience refrain from clapping, cheering, or booing, and no signage of any kind are allowed in the chambers. We also ask that everyone take a seat and not gather in the entryway area. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes, here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Bader.
Here.
President Schwab.
Here. At this time, I'd like to ask Councilmember Ryan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Please stand if you are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to ask Councilmember Zarlingo to lead us in the land acknowledgement.
Happily. This council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stohopes people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they've hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes for July 24th, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second's been made. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes?
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Abstain?
Councilmember Bader.
Abstain.
President Schwab.
Yes. All right. Well, good evening, Mayor.
Good evening, President Schwab and council members and community. A few exciting, fun updates for this last week. First, today, was excited to join President Schwab and Councilmember Vogely at the opening of the new playground at the Phil Johnson Ball Fields. Beautiful, accessible, all-inclusive playground right next to the ball fields for the younger siblings that are bored when their older siblings are playing ball. So it was great. We also welcomed the USA Softball Western Nationals last week, amateur softball players from 6 different states playing at Funko Field, so that was a lot of fun. I want to congratulate Chairwoman Terry Gobin for an outstanding State of Tulalip Tribes last Friday that I attended, and then also last Friday, I think it was last Friday, Bezos Academy had their first graduation ceremony, and it was by far the most beautiful graduation ceremony I've ever been to. 39 preschoolers doing their bridging ceremony, and their families and their grandparents and aunties and uncles, and everyone was there, and the principal cried, and everyone in the audience was crying, and the kids shared what their goals were and dreams and what they were going to be when they grew up, and it was just lovely and really neat celebration. And then want to remind everybody it's National Night Out on next Tuesday, so we have so many neighborhoods hosting a National Night Out, and I know the council is going to be there, and I'm going to be there, and our police officers and firefighters are going to be there, but most importantly, our community members getting to know each other and getting to know their fellow neighbors. So encourage everyone to look up your neighborhood online and visit those events. And then Tuesday is also Election Day, so just a reminder for everyone to turn in their ballots. And with that, I have no further comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, now it's time for public comment, which includes written comment acknowledgement. Under our rules, written comments shall be considered in the same manner as oral comments. The commenter must provide their name and city of residence. Written comments require this to be made part of the official council record. Hello, Angie. Do we have any written comments or anyone signed up this evening to speak?
Good evening, President Schwab. We do not have any public comments, but we received one written comment from Andrea Tucker regarding Everett Mall modifications, and that was provided to council, legal, city clerk, and administration to be part of the record.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, moving on to council comments and liaisons report. Ben Zerlingo.
Well, a couple of quick things. Went to a neighborhood meeting last week. Wanted to thank neighborhood co-chairs Mackenzie and Josh, keeping that neighborhood going and doing some real good work there. Also, that meeting got a brief from Chief DeMarco, answering questions about public safety. So that was really helpful, staying connected with our neighborhoods. And also a little bit from Emily Wicks, who was talking a little bit about fostering some block watch neighborhood activities. So strengthening our neighborhoods, that's always something great to see. And then with respect to National Night Out, several things to go to next week. One that I'm looking forward to, back to a place that my wife and I rented on Holly Drive now, I don't know, a couple of decades ago. Going back to see those folks again. Went there last year, the year before. It was a great thing to go and meet more people and have fun with. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fosse.
Mother of all garage sales is this weekend, in case anybody forgot. That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
No report tonight.
Councilmember Ryan.
Great, good evening, everybody. I attended the last two budget Proposition 1 information sessions on Saturday and another one last night, and I just want to really send an amazing shout out to all of the staff that worked really hard to put together all of the informational slides and to push out the invitations for the events and to answer questions from the public. I know it's a very contentious subject, and they were very gracious to share their knowledge and information and the work that the city's done over the past 2 decades to help address the budget deficit. Folks didn't get a chance to attend. The city has a website with all of the slides and all of the information, everettwa.gov/prop1, and with ballots due next Tuesday, if you're still trying to decide or trying to get the most information that you need about ways that the city has worked to address the budget deficit, cuts we've already made, ways that we've increased our revenue, I would encourage you to go to the website, flip through the immense number of slides, information to just get up to speed on it, because it's a really important issue in front of voters next Tuesday. So that's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Bader.
No report either. Thank you.
Yeah, I also did, like I said, like the mayor said, attended the opening of the new playground. What an amazing park that was. And the highlight, though, was when the mayor did a head-first dive down the largest slide. But, okay, do we have any administrative update?
Yeah, I just have a couple items. So we had a public commenter last week that on Zoom that mentioned land value taxation, and Mayor had heard that mentioned by I think with another AWC group, some other mayors, and so we're interested in exploring that as part of the legislative agenda. But it is a heavy lift; it would require an amendment to the state constitution. But it's definitely an intriguing idea, so it's something we'll be exploring a little bit more. And then 2 more short updates from our 2-person placemaking team. So Street Tunes starts tomorrow, and it's there for, those pianos will be out for 4 weeks, and we're expanding a bit this year. So there are some in South Everett, at the Village at Casino Road, they have their carnival on Saturday, so they'll have a piano there. Everett Mall, the Starbucks on 75th, and the Evergreen Branch Library. So that is exciting. You can see which pianos are where at everettwa.gov/streettunes. And then another interesting fact, the Farmers Market is celebrating their location downtown, celebrating their sort of 5th year, I guess, being downtown on August 5th. So it's great that the city's been able to have them in that location. And that's it.
Thank you very much. City Attorney David Hall.
There's no executive session tonight. For those of you who may not have checked your emails in the last couple hours, the court upheld our soda ordinance, which was an issue I briefed you on a couple weeks ago.
Thank you very much. All right, well, before we get to consent items, we have a presentation from our Transit Service Director, Tom Hingson.
Good evening, President Schwab, Council, Mayor Franklin. It's nice to be in front of you again. Tonight we're going to talk about the Swift Gold Line. As background, in November of 2009, in cooperation and coordination with Everett Transit and the City of Everett, Community Transit launched the first bus rapid transit line in the state of Washington. and it was a big deal. It was the beginning of a new era of communication, coordination, and cooperation between the City of Everett, Everett Transit, and Community Transit. That was followed in 2019 by the Green Line, which serves the southern portion of our city. And bus rapid transit is considered a complement, not a competition, to the services that we provide to you through Everett Transit. And tonight we have CEO Rick Ilgen-Fritz and his team to present to you a vision of what the next BRT investment in Everett could look like. Rick? Oh, and just so you know, we did not call each other and say, hey, what are you going to wear? Should we sit here? Or where would you like?
Thank you. This is the standard Transit GM uniform, so. Looking forward to taking a headfirst dive into BRT tonight. Thank you, Tom, for that great introduction. We are indeed here to talk about that. I would add to Tom's comments that many of you may be aware, last March 30th, we opened our third BRT line, which is the Orange Line, which intersects with both the green and blue lines and connects Mill Creek over to Linwood, where the new light rail station will open 30 days from today. So it is a huge year for transit here in Snohomish County and throughout the region. There is all that going on. Sound Transit's preparation to open the light rail line, to bring light rail into Snohomish County for the first time. The service network restructuring that we're doing to connect the communities of Snohomish County to that rail line. All three agencies, Everett Transit, Community Transit, Sound Transit, are working diligently within the parameters of the bipartisan infrastructure law on a zero-emission fleet transition and a greener future. And in addition to that, we are continuing now into developing our fourth BRT line, which will be the Gold Line. The Gold Line will connect the North County to the system, stretching from Everett Station and downtown Everett north through Marysville, ultimately up into Arlington and the Smoky Point Transit Center. You may recall in 2015, the voters of the Public Transit Benefit Area voted to invest in the expansion of Community Transit's network and the BRT system. And the Gold Line was a centerpiece of that plan, along with the Orange Line. So we have just kicked off the planning phase and the first round of public engagement to gather input from the jurisdictions and from the citizens in this corridor about how they'd like to see this project proceed, what they'd like to see it accomplish in terms of service, in terms of urban planning, urban design, functionality. And so we're here today to give you an update both on what the project is conceived to be and what the process for engaging with the public and with the jurisdictions will be going forward. So I want to emphasize again that this is the very beginning of a long conversation aimed at defining this investment. Our goal, as Christopher will share with you, is to tee up a decision on project scope sometime in the first quarter of next year, following 2 more rounds of public engagement as we advance the preliminary design of the project. So looking forward to that partnership. I want to introduce Christopher Silvera, who is the director of our capital program. We are joined as well by Melissa Colley, who's our Chief Planning and Development Officer, Morgan McGrath, who is our BRT project manager, and Jamyang Dorji, who's our local government liaison. So we have a crowd in the room here to help answer all your questions. And with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Christopher to walk through the deck.
All right, thanks, Rick. So before I dive into the Gold Line, I just want to set a primer for folks that may not be familiar with SWIFT to describe how it's different from our other services that we provide and what BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, is to community transit. To start with, SWIFT is different in that we focus on these 4 aspects of it being fast, frequent, reliable, and easy. We make it fast by virtue of ensuring that people pay before they board at stations. We provide ticket vending machines at the stations that people can use cash or credit or debit cards to pay at. If you have an ORCA card, you can tap the ORCA card readers that we have at our stations as well. And what this enables is then people to board any of the 3 doors on our buses as opposed to having to queue at the front of the bus to get on. That speeds the process of that boarding and alighting process. So that way Our buses spend less time stopped and more time moving along the corridor. It's frequent, all day. We have service every 10 minutes on weekdays and every 15 to 20 minutes on weekends. It's reliable. We invest in lane priority infrastructure as part of our SWIFT projects. Typically is involved something like that we call business access and transit lanes, or BAT lanes, as well as signal priority, transit signal priority, where our buses are communicating with signals to help get more green time at intersections. So again, buses are spending more time moving and less time stopped. And lastly, it's easy. We focus on ensuring that our customers have readily available real-time information to when the next bus is arriving. So it shortens their perception of wait time and gives them a sense of confidence that the bus is going to be coming when they expect it to. And it also relieves them from having to review schedules and whatnot to understand when that next bus is coming. They have a next bus board that tells them precisely when that bus will be there. It's also accessible for all passengers. Make sure that we have near level boarding to make that step up to the bus a little shorter, while we still maintain ramps for passengers using wheelchair devices. And we have onboard bike racks that are a little different from the bike racks you may be used to seeing that are on the front of the coach that you have to pull down and then lift your bike up onto. These bikes are directly on board, where you roll your bike onto the back doors of the bus and right onto the onboard bike rack. So it's a super straightforward process and super quick process that just makes riding your bike and taking transit really easy. So as Tom relayed, SWIFT was the first bus rapid transit system in Washington. We opened back in 2009. King County Metro came shortly after in 2010 with their Rapid Ride bus rapid transit system. C-Tran, which is based in Vancouver, Washington, opened up the Vine in 2017, and Spokane just recently opened up the City Line back in 2023. Sound Transit will be coming into the BRT 4A come 2027 with Stride, which will be primarily focused on I-405 and SR 522. So BRT systems offer a higher level of convenience from other bus services, giving people the opportunity to center their lifestyles around the line similar to light rail. The pandemic really affected all of our services. However, SWIFT was much more resilient, illustrating the difference in how people use the service. And by last year, had already beat our 2019 ridership levels, with 2024 continuing the trend with the opening of the SWIFT Orange Line, boosting ridership even further. So that's what this graphic is all built to describe, is how that impact of the pandemic had on the rest of our services versus SWIFT, which is shown in the blue and green bars until the Orange Line bar comes in 2024. So you see that drop on SWIFT was significantly less than the rest of our service portfolio and has already surpassed the ridership levels that we were seeing pre-pandemic as well. Liz, you have
Do we get to ask questions? I mean, obviously, I'm going to ask a question now, but would you prefer them now or later? Now. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks in the state of Washington got free kids rides, right? So I guess the question is community transit and the SWIFT a part of that?
Yep.
And how has that encouraged, increased, or done nothing for ridership?
Yeah, so we did enter the free youth program as in addition to most other agencies in the state of Washington. I don't know which ones didn't, but Rick, do you have any?
I'm not aware of any that didn't. There may be some out there. The incentives were significant, as you probably will recall, and thank you for that and all the work done down in Olympia to support that. We've seen a significant increase in youth patronage. Our youth ridership is now making up around 20% of our total system utilization, and we're still working through some data quality issues to try to make sure we're measuring it with some precision. It's sometimes hard to tell the difference between a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old. As you might imagine, and I'm sure Tom can attest, but we're seeing somewhere what we think is around a 50% increase in youth ridership overall. So the policy has had a significant effect.
Yeah, and anecdotally, I take SWIFT to work, and I see a large number of middle schoolers and high schoolers in my area riding on SWIFT regularly. So yeah, it's definitely having an impact that that was not the case prior to the Free Youth Fair.
So glad that was an easy baseball question.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We got a break here?
Not right now.
Okay.
So now we'll move into the Swift Gold Line, one of the reasons we're here today. With the Gold Line, we are aiming to bring forward the benefits of BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, to the North County, the frequent service, the convenience, where we're focused on bringing those aspects to connect Everett, Marysville, and Arlington, focused on improving that transit capacity, the speed and reliability of our bus transit service in the North County. Also, in alignment with the extension or with the Swift Gold Line, we would also be looking at the transit portfolio in the North County to leverage the Swift Gold Line, and that would improve connections to local and regional services, and also with the eventual connection to Link Light Rail happening at Everett Station or the Everett Station area. The Swift Gold Line will be that extension of high capacity, high frequency service beyond the Everett Station area. And then lastly, we utilize SWIFT to help support sustainable planned regional growth. So we're very much at top of minds with the comprehensive plan updates that the different jurisdictions are in the process of working through. We want to make sure that there's a tight connection between land use and transportation, so that way our transportation infrastructure is best leveraging those changes to land uses, those plan changes to land use, so that way we can make the most efficient use of public resources overall within the county. And transit is a major part of the picture and helping move people without creating more traffic, additionally more traffic than there would otherwise be without investments like this. So with the Swift Gold Line, we're currently in the scoping study phase. This is the first phase of any Swift project. It's essentially a project definition stage where we determine the alignment, the proposed station locations, and as part of this effort, we're also looking at the potential speed and reliability improvements that we want to incorporate into the project. This is expected to go through the late spring of next year, at which point we would then move into the environmental review and design phase. That typically takes 2-ish years. There's a fair amount of bureaucracy that happens then with respect to the federal government that we would be utilizing as a major funding source. And that comes with a lot of strings attached to it, but that's something that we work through during that process. That would then move into the construction phase, which in our experience has typically taken about 2 years to complete efforts, and finally aiming to launch this service in 2029. So the Swift Gold Line route is all the options that we're looking at right now start in Everett Station and make their way up to Smoky Point Transit Center. Within the city of Everett, we are planning to follow the Blue Line corridor going from Everett Station up to Pacific, and then turning west, going west on Pacific, adjacent to downtown, and then turning north on Hoyt. Then we would turn east onto Everett Avenue and then proceed north from there on Broadway. Going up Broadway, we would go across the 529 bridges and end up in Marysville, at which point we would then be looking at these 3 different options, which is one of the pieces that we're trying to work out as part of this current phase of outreach. We have a western option, a central option, and an eastern option that we're trying to work out, but they all end up getting us to 51st Avenue on the north end of Marysville to connect us to the Cascade Industrial Center, which for those that haven't been up there, there is a burgeoning amount of growth happening and with lots of jobs anticipated in that area. Enormous Amazon warehouse if you haven't been up there. And then we would turn west onto 172nd and connect into Smoky Point. You'll note that there's a dotted line up there for future expansion. That's a potential realignment that we would do with the Swift Gold Line to align with the land use plans that the City of Arlington has for increasing density on the north end of Smoky Point Boulevard, as well as building a center of excellence in partnership with the Washington State University, if I recall correctly. So again, we're trying to keep those land use plans in mind as we're building our services, so that way we are having that tight connection between those two pieces.
I have a question.
Question?
Oh, yeah.
A route question, please. Why was Hoyt chosen?
So thank you. So we decided to, well, when we were looking at options for how to go north through downtown, we were looking at the different north-south corridors, and Hoyt is one of the few, if not the only, one that has a parallel parking on it as opposed to diagonal parking. Diagonal parking is a safety issue for bus transit. It's difficult to move long corridors with that type of parking. So parallel parking is the easier one of the two, the safer one of the two to utilize as a bus path. So that was the primary reason why we chose Hoyt. We wanted something on the west side of downtown. That one had parallel parking.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay.
So, along with these alignments, we're also looking at how we might incorporate a new vision for transit in this corridor to make Swift a truly special service. First, for everyone's reference, this is how Swift currently operates in the South County using the curbside lanes like most other buses. And in this arrangement, Swift benefits from business access and transit lanes that I referred to earlier, where curbside lanes are basically right turn lanes, and with the exception that buses can go through them. We also leverage the transit signal priority technology in this arrangement to, again, help keep those buses moving through the signals, ensuring more green time at the signals rather than being stuck without that technology in place. With the Swift Gold Line, we're actually evaluating two additional options that are decidedly different from this current arrangement. The first involves moving both of these transit priority lanes into the center of the road. This would allow all buses to move from the curbside lanes into the center to help traffic flow in the curbside lanes. These lanes could also be leveraged by emergency vehicles to improve response times, and the stations would similarly be moved into the center of the road, so you wouldn't have buses going back and forth from the center lanes into the curbside to try to get to platforms. The second option that we're assessing is a single bidirectional lane that uses a special signaling system to promote safe operations. This would likely only be used by Swift buses because of the complexity that comes with this particular arrangement. But it uses less space than the two-lane arrangement, and buses in opposite directions would be passing each other at the stations. So you wouldn't end up in an instance where two buses are on the same bidirectional segment facing towards each other. This is something that that the city of Eugene uses, or
Emerald Express.
Emerald Express, thank you. Their MX system, BRT system utilizes this, as well as Indigo's Red Line uses this as well. So it's not totally untrodden territory, but it does come with some operational complexity involved with it. So both of these center running lanes options would create safer streets for all users by adding in access management elements, while also creating pedestrian refuges that help create shorter crossings across these busy roads. The big benefit to transit here is really that the system sets up a long-term reliability similar to light rail that we would be unlikely to get in the curbside by virtue we would be outside of the constraints of congestion. So as the North County continues to grow and more traffic finds itself taking the available alternatives going north-south, we believe that the center running lane options would enable us to provide a convenient option in the long term that then creates a true incentive for people to choose transit over otherwise driving, hopefully reducing the demand then for the roadway infrastructure for drivers and increasing pressure to try to expand roads that don't have places to expand.
Thank you. My apologies if I missed this. Which part of the Gold Line would be utilizing either of these options?
So in Everett, we would be looking at Broadway. Yeah,
So just the Broadway portion for the
Yeah.
Gold Line?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in Marysville State Avenue. So those are the areas that we're looking at for this option.
And then
So
what's the criteria for which sections would qualify for this type of lane configuration, and who's paying for that?
it would be on our dime, first of all. And second, it's the width of the roadway and what can actually enable provide enough space to allow these types of arrangements. The section through downtown, that loop, is not long enough to really support having this type of arrangement there. But Broadway is a long stretch that would enable that. So.
Councilmember Fossey?
If I could tag on to that answer to the last question. In terms of metrics, we'll also look at transit travel time in the corridor, ridership, differences between the various configurations, and general purpose traffic performance, level of service through the same corridor. So we look at the whole thing to see if it can be balanced.
For the 529 stretch, that's like a long ways where I assume there won't be a stop or maybe just one, but it can get backed up pretty easily, and I know
Yeah.
that they're going through their traffic changes and whatnot. Are there plans to put a bus-only lane through that stretch so folks aren't
Across the bridges?
sitting- Yeah.
No, there isn't. There's the 2 lanes there. It's not, we would not be able to maintain enough throughput through that bridge that it would totally affect traffic to such a great degree that it doesn't make sense. It will ultimately, it's not achievable with the bridges as they are today.
Okay. I mean, there's stretches with bridges and there's stretches that don't have bridges.
Yeah, we wouldn't go between the bridges and create a bus-only lane in between the bridge arrangement, basically from First Avenue to in Marysville down to I would say it's like 7th Street area of Everett would be the area where we wouldn't intend on having any bus-only lanes. There is enough complexity associated with those bridges and the areas between those bridges that it doesn't make sense for us to try to
Leapfrog.
fit in to leapfrog and try to provide a bus-only lane infrastructure in.
What about a
small
bridge over
segments.
the other bridge?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councilmember Fossey?
This may be a question for Yorick or even council members or Lingo, perhaps. What is the current status with the Sound Transit, the routes that they're considering at that kind of tail end terminus?
So I'm the board member on Sound Transit, so
Okay.
I'll take that one.
Fantastic.
Sound Transit is, the last station in Everett is near the Everett station. So there's not stations north on Sound Transit, the light rail. And so it is, we still haven't determined where that station is, but Sound Transit's aware and working closely with Community Transit, Everett Transit, and our city planning team to look at all the different infrastructure improvements that are currently happening or in the future. But there's one that's very close to Everett Station, and there's one that goes along McDougal. And the one that goes along Broadway has already kind of been clear that it's not a feasible one.
Thank
But
you.
it's still
That's
one
what
of
I
the
was looking
ones
for.
that's being reviewed, and everyone recognizes that it's not a good option because of the business displacement that would happen with that light rail station on Broadway.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I'll just sneak in here since this key word is pedestrian refuge island.
Mm-hmm.
You ever try to cross Evergreen in South Everett?
Yep.
Try to go from Starbucks to Safeway and 75th. I was wondering if these pedestrian refuge islands were considered on what's at the blue line then?
I was not here for that.
Okay.
That was a little before my time, but that's one of the constraints of these systems, that once you go through the initial investment of putting in millions of dollars of infrastructure, the ability to change those is much more difficult. You aren't going to get the same level of federal funding to make the change from going from the curbside to the interior. So if we wanted to change the blue line, for instance, that would be mostly on our dollar without an ability to leverage federal funds to do so because we already have the infrastructure in place. That's one of the reasons why we are thinking about this now as part of the gold line is to utilize the federal funding that we could get for this project and front load those costs. So that way we don't have to try to iterate towards a safer future or a more resilient a more resilient future that would take time and energy and more money over time to actually make work. So that's one of our intentions for why we believe that the center running lane option is valuable.
Thank you.
Okay. So how do we figure out our path forward? Well, as Rick mentioned, we have started our community engagement process, and over the next 9 months or so, we'll be reaching out with the public to discuss and receive feedback from folks on these various elements over 4 phases. The first phase is a consultation phase. That's the phase we're in now, where we are introducing the project to the public. We're describing the needs, the benefits, as well as introducing these lane options that we are evaluating. And we're seeking feedback from the public specifically around those Marysville alternatives, those routing alternatives that I described earlier. In December, we'll come back to the public, share the refined route option that we have taken into consideration the existing feedback that we're getting from this phase, share that with the public, get their feedback on that, and as well as start to gather feedback on these travel lane options. So getting into more detail and more depth than what we're doing during this phase on that piece. We'll also be working out the potential station locations and sharing those with the public to get their feedback on those station locations along that refined route option. In February, we'll then seek community feedback on our draft locally preferred alternative. The locally preferred alternative is essentially a step that is required for us to move forward into the next federal phase of the project. It's our board approves this, the alignment and the station locations and mode technically, and those 3 pieces are then shifted forward to the FTA to drive the federal project forward. We'll also be, during that phase, we'll also be sharing details on the proposed station locations and route based again on that phase 2 feedback that we received. After gathering that feedback at that stage on if we were hitting the marks, then we will go to our board to seek approval on the locally preferred alternative and finally come back to the public in May to share that board-approved locally preferred alternative, including the details on the station locations, the routing, and start working our way towards that environmental review and design phase. And here's just a high-level schedule of what that looks like. As you can see, we're here in Q3 of 2024, working through that phase 1 engagement and then taking through the next phases over the next 3 quarters with that intent on reaching the locally preferred alternative in the 2nd quarter of next year. With all that said, thank you guys for your time. Really appreciate it, and happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Any questions? Councilmember Fossey.
It's exciting to hear about some of the transportation amenities and things coming. Thank you for sharing all that. I understand that there's going to be an initiative on the ballot in November. Does that impact any of your operations plans or anything at community transit?
Well, thank you for asking. We're watching that closely, and we do have some concerns. I asked our chief financial officer to analyze the potential impacts of that if it was to pass. For community transit during the remaining period for which Move Ahead Washington has authorized. It was a 16-year package. I think we have 13 or 14 years left in that authority. The cumulative hit under all programs to community transit would be right around $200 million. A significant piece of that is the transit support grants that the state is awarding as an incentive for the zero free youth fare policy. There are also earmarks in the capital budget for the Swift Gold Line and the Swift Green Line, and our fifth line, which is out in the future, the Silver Line, of $10 million each. And then we've also assumed that we would compete for successfully a zero emission, bus and bus facilities grants. So, does it affect our operations? We would continue to grow service, so we're probably, financially we plan prudently, so we're feeling pretty confident about our ability to sustain service. It would certainly have some implications for our capital program. So, we hope we don't have to adjust accordingly, but we will do so if we have to.
Councilmember Lingo.
You'd mentioned the bike carrying capability being different on the Swift lines, and one of our commenters in the past, and I talked with the gentleman in some detail, I was interested in that mostly because it can provide us, especially with electric bikes and maybe easier on and off, kind of more of the last mile sort of solution to get to the Swift lines. Is that, and he made me aware of how much more convenient it is and also how much more suitable it is for the electric bikes that are getting more capable that way. Is that the kind of thing that is, that the number of slots and all that sort of thing is flexible on the buses? If that turns out to be an important factor that people really adopt, is that something the Swift buses can accommodate more of?
Go ahead.
I'll take the first cut at this, and I'll assure the rest of you that we didn't plan this in advance, but I am an electric bike user and commuter, and I ride the Swift Blue Line, so I get to experience that every week. There's 3 slots on the back of the bus for bikes, and given you can really only do it on a 60-foot articulated coach with 3 doors, so you can use that rear door to create space. In theory, you could put more bike racks in there, but really you're very constrained by the rear wheels and then the other seats, right? You want to have as many seats as you can have in the bus to accommodate the seated load. If you were to try to get more bikes in there, you'd have to take some seats out, and so there's always that trade-off. So we've been pretty comfortable that the 3-slot configuration works well. That's the nature of the BRT service, that people are jumping on and jumping off mid-route, so there's a lot of turnover as the bus makes its way down and up the corridor. So it's rare that you see more than 3 bikes packed in there. I don't know, Christopher, if you have any additional observations?
No.
Councilmember Vogely. Sorry.
About the e-bikes, I think, and I don't know if you just mentioned that, but do they fit very well? Or is that something they do? Well, I see a thumbs up from
Yeah.
neither of you.
Well,
Because I
have
am not
pictures.
an e-bike rider, but I am a Swift Line rider and Everett Transit. And then way back in the beginning, we were talking about payments. Does it take like Apple Pay and stuff like that too with the readers? Do you know?
So,
To pay to get on?
I think we currently are taking now Google Wallet, if I'm not mistaken. That was just a recent change to the Orca
And
system.
Android.
Yeah, through Android.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
Thank you.
just really bizarre because one time I put my wallet towards it. I'm like, okay, my Orca card. And it didn't come from my Orca card. It came from somewhere else. And I was like, noted. I will take my card out and use it.
Yeah,
and
I
put it
think you
back
can now
in.
put your Orca card on your Android phone, but they have not yet done that for Apple. I think it's in their roadmap, but it's not yet completed.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you. And I'm also excited for more Swift.
Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. I'm going to focus my questions here on the goal line, even though it's early in the process, so I apologize. Obviously, your scope and everything. Thinking of the distance on Broadway north of downtown, conceptually, what, 1, maybe 2 stops in that distance?
No, I think we're planning on having stops about every third of a mile in Everett. So a little bit more frequently than we normally would for Swift. And part of that goes in hand with that investment in a dedicated alignment along the middle of the road in order to support, for instance, if we, a couple things here. Part of that is supporting the potential of having a single bidirectional lane. You want to have short segments in order to ensure that you aren't going too far before you can cross another bus going in the opposite direction. So we try to keep that limited to a relatively short segment in order to reduce the amount of time a bus may be waiting at the other segment that's that's opposing the direction of the bus that's entered the segment. So sorry, it's maybe hard to visualize for other people. But the other piece is accessibility into the system. So we want to leverage this product to the extent that we can. And Everett has a fair amount of density that is planned along Broadway, and in doing so, and also has a really solid network, street network in North Everett. So we want to make we want to ensure that more people can get to and from the each of these stations, and by doing so, we would need more stations to provide access points without people having to walk too far. So, I'd say it's about 4 stations, I think, along the Broadway corridor between Everett and the Everett Community College area.
Given that much more extensive level of investment in Everett than, say, the 201 or 202 provide right now, do you guys anticipate asking us for more money for the Gold Line?
Not at this time.
Good answer.
We're in a relationship, the city of Everett and Community Transit, and no relationship is ever static. And, this relationship is going to evolve with this project, and we're excited about that. This project, as you can tell from Christopher's presentation, is going to be the most ambitious BRT project we've tried to undertake. We're interested in trying to do something very cool and innovative here that adds a lot of value to the city and the cities north of here. And that means a significant capital investment throughout the corridor. And we're looking to leverage strong federal participation in that investment. So, we're going to do this together. And I'm looking forward to that dialogue and where it leads.
Again, I know we're early in the process. Visualize what happens to the 201 or 202?
So we will do a north end, we'll call it a north end restructure when we're getting ready to activate the Gold Line. And we would, allocate some of those 201, 202 hours into the Gold Line, but we would also be looking at a pretty significant restructure of our local routes north of here to feed the system.
But probably in Everett, we anticipate the 201 and 202 not coming down Broadway, I guess, right?
Most likely, yes, you'd see the Gold Line, and you'd see it more frequently than you see the 201 and 202.
Gotcha. And the purpose of the dedicated lanes is to keep bus speeds up?
Yeah,
Speed and reliability.
Yeah, it's the reliability. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about the Broadway corridor, and I live in Riverside. I don't see, until you get to 529, obviously you indicate you're not going to be building a new bridge to accommodate additional traffic on 529. My experience of traffic there, even in rush hour, isn't the traffic is slowing down anyone. It's that the light, until you get up to the very north end there with 529 again, it's the lights that are slowing things down. Is there really the need for the dedicated lanes along the Broadway corridor if it's not traffic that's really slowing things down, but traffic lights that are slowing things down?
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind that we are not just building for today, we're building for the long-term future. And as development continues to take place in the north end of the county, that we shouldn't assume that congestion is going to be static with what it is today. And as I relayed earlier with the Blue Line, once you make an investment in the curbside, you're in the curbside. If we want to move into the center of the road, the time to do that is on the front end of the project, not to try to make that change at a later date. So what we're trying to do is at least consider and evaluate these options and see if we can't find a path to ensuring a long-term resiliency that we feel will have a positive impact on people's choices, travel behaviors, as well as on our operating reliability. So frankly, the more reliable our transit patterns are, the lower our operational costs as well, and the more consistent that we can build our schedules, and that leads to people being able to know that they can get from point A to point B in X number of minutes, and they know they can count on that. And we want to make sure that we're building a product that people can count on.
Understand. And obviously, your comment about congestion not being static, I think we're actually hoping for some improvement here with the opening of the HOV lanes on
Right,
5.
yeah.
But I guess I would request as we go forward that, I don't know, Everett would be the appropriate entity that would do it, but a study about parking on the Broadway corridor.
Yep.
I don't see it needed so much in front of big businesses like Safeway, but I think some of our most small businesses on the Broadway corridor depend on street parking for that. How many complaints do you get from 201 and 202 riders that it doesn't loop through downtown?
You don't usually get complaints from people about something that's not happening. It's usually about something that is happening, to be frank.
My reason for asking is I'm a somewhat regular transit rider, but my perception is looping through downtown is going to add 10 minutes running time to what is now the 201 and 202. And especially if we're looking to have this service connect at Everett Station, ultimately to Link, it seemed even that amount of time would be a deterrent to people coming out of Marysville and the North End to deciding to connect to Link using transit, instead just hop on I-5 and drive down to Everett Station.
Yeah, so you have to remember, this is a part of a network, and the Gold Line is not meant to just shuttle people from Marysville or Arlington to Everett Station to Link Light Rail. We would be interlacing this with our express services that are running on I-5. We would have connections between those points, so Fourth Avenue in Marysville, as well as at Smoky Point Transit Center, would be connections between our express network and the BRT network. So if people are truly trying to get as fast as possible to Everett Station, it will be on the interstate utilizing the HOV lanes that are going to be in place from Marysville down I-5. This is meant to be a connection between Everett, Marysville, and Arlington, the Smoky Point area. It's not just a shuttle, if you will, between light rail and these other communities.
Gotcha. Okay, good. I mean, it just seems if that was a significant part of the purpose, though, it would somewhat work against that. So anyhow, thanks. That's the questions I've got.
Okay, thank you for the thorough questions, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for having us. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you squeezing us in, and we're looking forward to the dialogue ahead.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Okay, well, moving forward, before we go to our consent items, did we have any questions for administration? Councilmember Fossey.
Are there any updates? Jennifer Gregerson, thank you. President Schwab.
Councilmember Fossey, I didn't get an answer about your question about the difference between electronic claims and regular claims, other than I think that they're electronic bank transfers, but it is something that does appear regularly on your agenda, and I don't know why this one is 2 months instead of 1 month, but I'm working on it.
Okay, just to follow up with the answer on that, because it seemed, I wasn't used to seeing it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so moving on to our 5 consent items. Do I hear a motion?
Councilor Ryan, so moves.
Member Bader, seconds.
Okay, motion and seconds been made. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes?
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, now we have proposed action item number 6. It's already been read into the record. And I will read item 7 as the first reading. Council Bill 2407-15, first reading, adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled WFP Air Scour Blower Building Replacement Fund 336, Program 034. Third and final reading will be August 14th, 2024. Does the council have any questions about item 6 or 7? Okay, thank you. So moving on to our action item, item number 8. authorize the mayor to sign the international agreement, ILA, with the Snohomish County for US 2 I-5 interchange justification planning study. Do I have a motion?
Councilmember Ryan so moves.
Okay, motion.
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Okay, hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes, okay, thanks. Moving on to item number 9, update, or periodic updates on the 2044 Comprehensive Plan. Our planning director, York, it's all yours.
Indeed. Thank you, Council President. Good evening, Council. I'm York Stevens Wajda, Planning Director. With me is Alisanne Wetzel, Long Range Planning Manager and Project Manager for the Comprehensive Plan update. I'm going to give an update on the progress of this Everett 2044 Comprehensive Plan and Development Regulation periodic update. It's an update. Got a lot of information to cruise through, and if it's okay, I'd like to ask for questions at the end. I'd be happy to go back to any slides that we need to. So the periodic update is, I think of it as being organized into 3 primary tracks, and I'll give an update on each one of these. The first one are the land use and the zoning maps. These are the big picture maps that define our urban form. They're the comprehensive plan's future land use map and the zoning map series that accompany it and implement it. Currently, those regulatory zoning map series are the zoning map, the building height map, maximum building height map, and the street designation map, and those 3 work in concert to define what can be built where, how it can be built, and what the land uses might be on any given parcel in the city. We have goals, policies, actions, and the plan document. Those provide guidance for the maps. They provide guidance for the city's development regulations and their administration, for capital project development and delivery, and for major city initiatives and aspects of staff work. And then middle housing would normally be under one of those 2 previous bullet points there, under the maps and the policies, but it's a big enough and a new enough thing that affects 40% of the city's land or 75% of the city's land for housing that is deserving of its own track. On further reflection, after having completed these slides, I think we should have a 4th track on here, which is development regulations. In addition to the new regulatory framework for middle housing and some of the regulations needed to implement the maps and the policies, we have a punch list of about 130 and counting code amendments that staff have flagged and kept track of since the last periodic update. And these range from minor housekeeping amendments, clarifications, to significant and substantive changes. So going forward, we'll add a 4th track on here. Looking at the maps, I think of the 3 or 4 tracks, the maps are the ones that you've heard the most about over the past 2 years of this project. Review continues with the alternatives. Staff continue to review there's alternative 1, current plans extended, alternative 2, concentrated growth, and alternative 3, dispersed growth. We've been reviewing them with subject matter experts, departments, and outside agencies in technical sense and in a more qualitative sense. We've also been sharing them widely and repeatedly for review by the public, city departments, and outside agencies. And we just finished a focused outreach push in May and June of this year. Saw a lot of you at neighborhood associations and other events. And a big focus of that outreach push was growing awareness of and seeking input on those alternative maps. Environmental impact statement, the review of the alternatives will be documented in a formal environmental impact statement that we're now working toward issuing late this year. We had been thinking that environmental impact statement would be complete around the middle of this year, but it's a complicated document. There's a lot of folks involved in the review, and we want to make sure that it's done right. So we're taking a little bit more time and thinking that statement will release the information and share it with you, the Planning Commission, and the public as it becomes available, but that the actual environmental impact statement may come closer to a complete document rather than midway through the process. Staff are also working on fleshing out an updated centers hierarchy. We currently have centers, notably downtown Everett Metro Center, which is a regional growth center and capital of Snohomish County, and a concept that we've been working on for a couple of decades now. There's also the Manufacturing Industrial Center, and there's a lot of policy discussion and concepts around different types of centers, nodes, central places, and gathering places. Alisan is working hard right now on the urban form element, which includes this center's concept and thinking of a 3-tier set. And I mention that now just because it may have some impacts on those land use maps. Speaking of the land use map, this flow chart I think you've seen before, the Planning Commission, and it's definitely been part of presentations before, but it looks a little bit different now. So the lines going from, so we start with, of course, the existing zoning and land use maps. We developed a set of growth geographies. Those were the urban corridors, the urban corridor frames, the connectors, the centers, and using that, those standard geographies, developed the 2 alternatives. And the alternatives were never going to be pick one. It was always going to be a hybrid. Bless you. And as we've done that outreach, as we've had the conversations and looked at the alternatives, I think we had indicated this in some of our conversations before, but alternative 3 is emerging as a stronger starting point for the hybrid alternative. So you see the thicker dashed line there coming out of alternative 3. But I'll cover in the next slide here where some aspects of alternative 2 we are thinking would fit in well, and then there's some limited opportunity for some other changes other than from those alternatives, which I'll cover here. So on the background of this map, there is the alternative 3 map that that folks have seen for over a year now, and this we've picked up, and I want to stress that this is early stages, and this is just staff's thinking. This continues to be malleable, changeable through the rest of the year, but staff has been kind of coalescing around this alternative 3, and a couple of changes have stood out in all of our conversations around the city. The core of Metro Everett, of downtown Everett, has always been a great opportunity for significant growth. Right now, I think we top out at about 25 floors. Alternative 3 looked at up to 40 floors of height in that downtown core. We're not seeing that kind of demand for very tall buildings right now, but just like the community transit folks before us, we're planning for the future and allowing for possibilities that we may not see right around the corner, but this is a 20-year plan. And so picking up some of the highest heights in the alternatives for the Metro core seems appropriate there. As I said, with the centers, we're considering using some of the higher heights from alternative 2. One of the major differences between the 2 alternatives is the corridor frames, the area that's between 1 and 3 blocks off of the major arterials of Evergreen Way and Everett Mall Way. For the most part, those are currently single-family zoning, and to jump with what it winds up being a lot of acreage all the way up to mid-rise seemed a little bit overly dramatic. So the alternative 3 has a little bit of more measured, kind of a wedding cake stair-step approach of transitions from what would be middle housing outside of the corridors to the higher heights right along those arterials. So again, the low rise seemed to fit well and seemed to be more supported in our conversations, but maybe around those centers, and these kind of blue, green, teal colored dots are our bus rapid transit and major transit stations. Those would likely be at the focal point for some of these centers, and maybe it's around some of those nodes where some of the higher heights in the frames from alternative 2 might be appropriate. Our water utility is surplusing Reservoir 5 and has requested to bring that to a mid-rise level, which seems to fit the parcel and its surroundings there. So that's something we're looking at. Oh, that is, I don't know how to, let me see the cursor here. Yeah, right there, right next to View Ridge Elementary. So we're looking at incorporating that into the preferred alternative, but again, this is preliminary and would need some study, which we will flesh out in the coming months. The north side of Glenwood to Kenwood, I don't know if there was a conscious decision to, it's near the woods for sure. This is across from the now shuttered aggregate mine along Glenwood Avenue. There is one parcel split into two across Kenwood Drive. The northern part is neighborhood business. The southern part is R2 zoning. They've been used in the past for heavy equipment repair and commercial parking. And since the mine closed, it has been quite a series of folks looking to occupy both of those spaces for more on the industrial side of uses, and they've been frustrated by the zoning that doesn't allow for that. There's some legal non-conforming uses. There's a whole story behind it. But at the end, we're looking at kind of separating those two parcels, the southern part that is just a long parking lot that is currently designated for single-family residential. Just its relationship to the arterials seems to be a better fit for low-rise than for a series of houses with driveways on Glenwood, which is how the rest of Glenwood operates, but at least for the potential for new development, that seemed more appropriate. And Valley View for middle housing, as we were doing our visits to different neighborhood associations and learning some of the challenges and opportunities in each of them. The challenges seemed to outweigh the opportunities with regard to more development in the Valley View neighborhood. And I'll point to two specific issues. One of them is it's a single point of access to that entire neighborhood across I-5. There is one little emergency gate in the noise wall, but otherwise only one way in and out. And then there's also kind of slope stability and water issues in there where it seemed like adding more development to it might make a tough situation tougher. Again, all of these, as well as the underlying concept of using alternative 3, are working concepts and thoughts. Other than the map, what is going to be in the comprehensive plan? It includes vision statements, goals, policies, actions, text, descriptive maps, capital project lists, and financing plans broken up into 11 elements. Don't worry, this is not what the cover is going to look like. I just had to have something that looked like a plan. Some of the core pieces of text in the document are the goals, the policies, and the actions. These are the ones that most clearly direct staff's work and the implementation and interpretation of the development regulations. A goal is simply what we seek to accomplish. Policies is guidance for actions, implements the goals, how we are going to accomplish those goals, framework for future decision making, and authorization for implementing regulations. The policies are most of the really directive words that are in the plan. And then we have actions, which are clear and discrete city work program items. You know when you've started them and you know when you're done with them. That's how you distinguish it from a policy, which is kind of an ongoing way of doing business. So we're going to have goals, policies, and actions for all of the 12 plan elements, which you can see listed on here with the order that we're currently looking at taking them to the Planning Commission. We've already been through climate change in the last couple of meetings and had the first meeting on housing. None of these will be finished just because they're done with their first round through the Planning Commission. We're kind of going through each one of them for feedback, using that as an opportunity to share that element with the public and with other stakeholders and with the council. And then you see at the end of this period around winter, we'll be bringing it all together. Comments will be open throughout the rest of this year and into next year. So it's just kind of trying to narrow on down towards a final project, again, still shooting for first quarter of next year. Quick note on the two elements that we've brought through the Planning Commission so far and how we are approaching each one of these elements. So we start with a list of key inputs. Always starts with state law and agency rules and regional policies, and then where we have city policy documents like the Climate Action Plan or the Rethink Housing Action Plan that have been adopted by the City Council. That's of course recent policy direction for the city, and we incorporate that right into the comprehensive plan as appropriate. In other words, the most detailed things are not going to make it in there, but the big picture types of things that are appropriate for goals and policies will. Things like the hazard mitigation plan, mayoral directives, and there are more than that, but these are some of the key inputs. And then, of course, the existing comprehensive plan. And then we prepare a goal alignment sheet. That landscape looking thing has all of the relevant goals from above and from our existing plan, and then we use that to kind of develop a set of goals for the proposed new comprehensive plan. And then we have a sheet of goals, policies, and actions. These were shared with the Planning Commission for climate change and housing so far, and they are up on our webpage, and I'll show you where folks can find that and provide their comments and get into the details of it. These are really important words. Every single word matters in these goals, policies, and actions, so really encourage folks to take a close look at it. Just going to show the goals for climate change and housing. And you can see them all there. Each one of these came from somewhere. For the most part, for climate, we relied on our climate action plan. Again, having just recently been endorsed by the City Council, that seemed like good marching orders. The state and regional policy also provides some direction to the city that we need to implement. So each of these, hopefully by the end of this process, we'll have really solid agreement that that's what we're working towards, because then that's the music sheet that we'll hand out to the whole orchestra of city government to carry out over the next 20 years. Housing element, same general idea as climate change, and then the rest will be along those lines going forward. So you can see some of the key policy documents that we used as inputs, and we have the same goal alignment sheet and goals, policies, and actions available for review and comment. Only 3 housing goals, but we've packed a lot into them. They reference our growth targets right in them, those numbers that you've seen in the line charts since the beginning of this process, and hopefully have picked up all of the important themes that were in Rethink Housing and other of those key inputs. Again, doing these rolling reviews, and we will through the balance of this year. everettwa.gov/2044 remains the place to go for to find these documents and to find out how to comment. We have an email, we have a web form, and all of that. Other than the website, I would encourage folks to closely follow the Planning Commission. Everything about this project goes through the Planning Commission, and that'd be the best place to stay abreast of the latest developments. And then that last track was middle housing. We had 2 long workshops with the Planning Commission on May and June, where we worked through every single one of these topics, brought a little bit of context, what our current regulations have, some staff proposed options. We heard some good feedback from the Planning Commission, and I wish I could go through all of these because it's very interesting, but I'm going to have to just leave it as a teaser for now, and I think this would be an appropriate one for a full briefing just on middle housing. Folks can also look at both the agenda packets for those 2 Planning Commission meetings available online and the videos as well. Next steps include continued work with the Planning Commission. We're going back on August 6th, next Tuesday, to talk birthing centers for the council requested legislation. There'll be a public hearing on that. That's separate from the comp plan. For the comprehensive plan, we'll be turning back to the housing element to go over some of the questions and comments we received from the Planning Commission last time, and then any public comments and input that we receive by next Tuesday. So for folks watching, this would be a fantastic time to give input on housing so that we can bring that to the Planning Commission and have it as part of the discussion. After August 6th, we'll set housing aside, again, always open for comment, and then we'll start working on urban form, which is the next element. Always seeking input on the rolling reviews, looking for the next opportunity for city council briefings, potentially including the Built Environment Committee, working closely with we will be working closely with our boards and commissions on their subject matter of expertise, like the Transportation Advisory Commission for the transportation element. And then we would plan another outreach push. We will continue to attend events and be out there in the community, but our next real sustained push, like the May-June one, will be this winter, closer to when we have kind of a complete package for folks to review. That's what we got.
Okay, questions? I'll start down the line here. Councilmember Zalingo.
Well, I was looking at the previous version of these maps. I grabbed that from my desk, and one of the things that's there is one of the light rail proposed stops there, the stations, and fairly near that, and that one is kind of partly dashed and partly continuous because parts of it in the city and part of it not, something that may change in the future. Quite nearby that is a station location that's proposed but not shown at all because it's not in the city. On the other hand, if things there will affect what happens with our planning. So I wonder if maybe that ought to be all dashed, included on there, but maybe all dashed. But in line of that, what I was thinking about, and I think this might make sense for a future discussion because I don't think it's time for it tonight, but that would be something that our community members have talked with me a little bit about, and is how is this harmonized and reconciled with what's going on with our surrounding communities? How do we all share the load? How do they understand how this stuff comes together? And what are the processes for that? So I think that because in the end, it all sort of has to work together somehow, and the better, the better. So if there's an opportunity to touch on that a little bit and maybe a little bit more on these centers, because I know for PSRC, they've got a definition of centers of their own, and that's not the same thing. So a couple of those things might be good for future briefings.
Absolutely, and I think it was you, and we had a planning commissioner representing Silver Lake, and the mayor had all asked to see what's on the other side of that boundary, basically the interface between the city and the county, and especially on the south end. We've got those maps, and we're decoding, a whole different zoning code that's on the county side, and what does that mean, and how does that relate to the city? For the most part, there's one little part where the city limits are very close to 19th. And in that little part, you've got high-rise abutting on the county side, low-density residential. That is probably the most stark transition. We currently have some regulations that require a step down of height adjacent to lower density zoning that does apply even if the lower density zoning is across the border in the county. That would help with that transition, and that specific transition regulation would be under review as part of this process as well. Other than that, for the most part, it seemed to fit well, but again, we've got some more decoding to do, but we'd be happy to bring that to all the folks who are interested in that.
Thank you.
Same with centers.
Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. I have a couple. Let's see. Where to start? This is probably an easy one. So in one of the earlier slides, there were staff requests for changes. Who else can make a request? And where would that happen? Or how?
I think everybody can make a request, and this is a perfect time to hear about that as we're doing the environmental review and making sure to do the right analysis around it. We have not heard a lot. We had a specific amendment request process about 1 year ago. I think it was in June of last year, and we got 7 specific amendment requests in. All of those remain under consideration and actually would be implemented under Alternative 3. Most of those were on arterials and in places where either from middle housing or from the designations along the urban corridors would be just what they asked for. So that was the kind of defined process to get a specific request into the hopper with the city. Of course, council, it's your plan. This is a legislative action, and we'd be happy to take any comments and suggestions and work with those. Same from folks in the public.
To move along with that, a request, I think that I'm hearing, and maybe I'm not, but a request is essentially a request for a rezone, a request for an amendment, because this whole comprehensive plan is the plan comprehensively moving forward and how everything fits in the city. And so, I know that at the end of the year, if some people want to build things like Everett Housing Authority, they just got their rezone that they requested, and that was and I can't remember if that was a special thing or if it was a end of the year, let's get it all done at this certain time. I wish I knew all the words that I know you guys do.
Docket, maybe?
So maybe to help.
Yes,
I think
please.
what you're asking about, I think you might be asking two things. Can council members say, I have an idea that's different from what I saw on the story map. I have a suggestion, or I just read those housing policies and like, felt like that didn't make sense, or I wish you'd use a different word. And also, could the public do the same thing? For the council, what we talked about after tonight was that we might have them come back in a month and say, remember what we told you about climate change and housing policies? Any thoughts? And also, you can email them and meet with them at any time. But any thoughts? Okay, we're going to move on to the next chunk and talk to you about those ones and do that for like 5 months, basically, pending the agreement of council leadership that that's a good use of your time. So that might be one way. So if you saw stuff and you're like, I might have ideas, you could wait until we bring them back. We were also just talking about whether this would be, we could also talk about it, Built Environment Committee, along with these presentations to the whole council. And then I think the last method would be, I know Yorick and Alisan would love to sit down with you as well. Small groups or 1 or 2 or 3, whatever we could schedule to dig a little deeper or just to flesh out an idea that you might have that maybe isn't ready for prime time, but you want to talk through it or understand the path that we're on. And then what Yorick can say better is basically like, it's good for all that to happen kind of now. It helps it so that it can be rolled into the work that they're doing. It can go before the planning commission and that longer public process. It'll all come back to you at the end, I think like January, February, for public hearings and that process. But if anything's really different, then we just want to make sure that that can be part of that whole environmental review and all of that. So those are sort of the places where you guys specifically, but also the outreach. I made them cut the outreach slides for time. They've done a lot of outreach and they're continuing to do it, so, yeah.
Thank you. That did, I think, sum up a good piece of my questioning. So, yes, thank you. And maybe it would be good for a built environment committee, but development regulations and rezoning, and I know that the city has applied for a rezone of a piece of currently owned land. And, you know, what is our policy now? How does it work? And like, I think in like 2016-ish, and I might have this name wrong, but Mike Palacio was a person that worked here. And he came before council with a list of all of the properties that could go for sale, which is not rezoning. Anyways, I've got a lot of land use questions that I think have to do with the comprehensive plan and the why and how does it come before the comprehensive plan and not with the comprehensive plan. So I'm gonna stop there and really encourage, hopefully, with my co-chair for the built environment, I think, to dig a little deeper into how the rezoning works with city properties,
Yep.
et cetera.
And I'd like to step in. We did have some conversations with the administration as Jennifer was speaking. We didn't land on the final decision, but we thought that you go back and maybe subject matter by block, that we give opportunities for council members to meet, to do some scheduled meetings. We're thinking starting in September. August may not be a great time, but starting in September, having York and his staff kind of figure out what blocks of chunks, how do we divide it up? And stick to those subject matters for each meeting. And then put that schedule out to us to decide, you know, if we want to, if 4 or 5 people want to schedule that subject, then we thought bringing it out to the build out committee, or maybe have that subject be covered here. If that helps, if you guys like that plan, that's kind of where we were headed. So, that helps.
That helps.
Okay, great, thanks. Anything else? Oh, good, thank you. Good questions. Councilmember Fosse, did you have something? I was just gonna go down the line here. Okay. Councilmember Ryan.
Of course I do. Thank you for the update. I appreciate it. I attended the Valley View meeting when staff was there to present on it, and I appreciate the concerns that staff heard from the residents about the stability of the hillside and concerns about heavier weight of heavier buildings in that space. So I'm glad to see that reflected in the map. I was curious, what are the different elements of a constrained residential zone? What does that mean specifically?
I don't know. TBD. We're still early. I
Okay.
mean, we know that that area definitely is a constrained zone. But how we are going to implement it, we're still working those details out. We are not to regulations. We're still at goals and policies.
So would that be a new zoning?
Almost all of the
definition?
middle housing will be a new zoning.
Okay,
So, yes.
great. I was curious for, I know you had mentioned that under the key input section for the climate change element, it's not a full list, but just wanted to double check that our city's pros plan was also one of the key.
Absolutely.
And then also curious if there are any documents or plans from our local tribal partners or any input that they provide for the climate
We have
element.
met with the tribal partners to discuss the plan and discuss coordination. They want to see the plan before they really start commenting. So we will let them know that these two elements are up and they're in their draft form, and please feel free. We got an email from Fish and Wildlife today saying, yay, we're ready to comment. And we're like, oh boy, you guys are keen. So, yes, we are getting some feedback. The other thing I wanted to mention that's on that list is the draft outline of the entire plan. So it's got each of the vision statements, what the specific element will be addressing, and the outline as to how the information will flow into it.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions.
Councilmember Bader? No. Okay, we're good. I had just, oh, you already had your chance. No, Council, I'm going to talk here first, then you get a turn. I had a couple of questions. I didn't see the bike plan as far as a list of items.
Yeah, those inputs were just for the climate and for housing topics. So there would be a different list for the transportation element, which would certainly include the bike plan.
Okay, thank you. And then you didn't mention in your presentation about market rate versus subsidized. What portion of, or is that a portion of our planning document?
Yes.
And what section would that be under?
It'll be in housing.
In housing? Okay.
It won't be in the goals and policies. The goals and policies provide for it, but what proportion we have to provide is in the narrative.
Okay, thank you. And then I get the impression that we're kind of our baseline plot is alternative plan 3. Is that kind of where we're at right now? Is we're kind of our baseline that we're working off of?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Just to make sure something isn't missed, I think you were probably ahead of me on this, but with respect to Valley View, there was that study that was done. Tribes were involved in that. I think Forterra was coordinating that. So there's a whole document that does reflect the tribe's interests and comments on that, and that was done, I don't know, a year and a half ago or so. But there is a document that has that specifically refers to Valley View and did have the tribal involvement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, with no further business, thank you for the presentation. We are now adjourned.